In this video, I'll show you how to craft every single potion and poison in KCD2. I'll go step by step for each one so you don't even need the recipe. I've also included a link to the database where all recipes are, if you prefer the written instructions instead. Check the timestamps to skip to the recipe you need, and let's get right to crafting. We are making Aesop Potion, which starts with spirits. We need belladonna, boar tusk, and comfrey. So we're going to start by grinding the comfrey. There's 2 of them in there. So we grab it twice. Once in the mortar, twice in the mortar and pestle, and then we grind it up. So we're going to add this directly into the cauldron. We're going to add the boar tusk to the cauldron. And we're going to set it down and turn the timer for 2 turns. That's going to be 2 turns of boiling. So you set it down and then you set the timer. All right, time's up. Let's do a second turn. And once that's done, we pull it off the fire. And we're going to go grind our belladonna. So grab 1 handful of belladonna, throw it in the mortar and pestle, and grind it up. Once that's done, we toss that in the cauldron. And then we will grab our file. And this, because it's using spirits, we need to distill. So we'll go ahead and put that in, and we should have a strong Aesop potion. There we go, strong Aesop. We are making Aqua Vitalis, which starts with a base of water. So we'll go ahead and toss that in the cauldron. We need to prepare our ingredients. That's going to be dandelion and marigold. So 2 handfuls of dandelion. Toss those both in. And then we're going to immediately lower it. We'll flip the sand glass, and that will be 1 turn. As soon as it's done with the sand, we will lift it up so it stops boiling, and then we'll work on the marigold. There we go, it's all done. Let's go over to the marigold. And this needs to be grinded. We'll toss it in the mortar and pestle, grind it up. We'll add it in, and then we're going to boil for 2 turns. So that's turn 1. We lower it first, then the sand glass, we wait 2 turns. There's turn 2. We'll pull it up, and then we need to distill afterwards. All right, sand's all gone. Let's go ahead and pull it off the fire, get the file ready, and we need to use the distillery here. And we should have a strong Aqua Vitalis potion if everything went right. There you go. We are working on Artemisia Potion, which starts with spirits. So we'll go ahead and grab that and toss it in the cauldron. We need 2 ingredients here. We need sage and wormwood. Typically it goes in alphabetical order, so even if sage doesn't come up first, you can grab that first because we already know wormwood is going to be at the bottom. Save you a little bit of time. We are going to add the sage to the cauldron and boil for 1 turn. Sage only requires 1, so we'll grab 1 handful, toss it in the cauldron. We'll lower it to the fire, turn the sand glass over it, and watch it boil for 1 turn. Now that we're done, let's go ahead and grab 2 handfuls of wormwood. This requires 2, so 1 into the mortar and pestle, handful number 2, and then we'll grind both of these up and toss them into our cauldron, and we will boil for 2 turns. Let's go ahead and move it down, flip the sand glass, and we'll wait for 2 turns. All right, turn number 2. There we go, we're all set. Now we need to grab a file, and we are going to distill. So grab our file, look at the still, and then we will pour our potion out that way. And we should have a strong Artemisia potion if everything went according to plan. There we go, we're looking good. We are working on a Bane Potion today, which starts with a base of wine. Toss that into the cauldron. We need 3 ingredients here. So we will need, in alphabetical order, we need the mushroom Amanita muscaria. We need belladonna. And we also need wormwood. We start with the wormwood. Wormwood, we need only a single handful. So grab that, add it into the cauldron, and we will drop it down for 2 turns. So we go ahead and lower this, turn the sand glass, and we'll do that twice before we pull off the fire. Here we go, first turn, and there's our second turn. Pull it off the fire, and we'll work on the second, which is the belladonna. We need 2 handfuls of belladonna. These are going to go in the mortar and pestle to grind. So 1 handful, 2 handfuls in the mortar and pestle, grind it up. Go ahead and toss that into the cauldron, and we are going to lower it down. Turn the sand glass and immediately press the bellows. And you can see the fire is much more intense when you tug on the bellows. This one we only need 1 turn. And there you go. Now we add the last ingredient, which is the mushroom, the Amanita muscaria. Go ahead and toss that in raw. And then we finish with the distillation using a file. So file, look at your still. And then we'll go ahead and get our potion. And if everything went according to plan, we should have a strong Bane Potion. There you go. We are working on the Bowman's Brew. Let's start with spirits. Go ahead and pour that in. We need 2 ingredients here. We need Eyebright and St. John's Wort. Eyebright, down at the bottom you'll see St. John's Wort. We are starting with the Eyebright, which is 2 handfuls. So grab 2 handfuls of Eyebright, add them directly into the cauldron. There's 1. Grab our second, toss that in, and we are lowering this for 3 turns now. Put that down, turn the sand glass, and wait patiently. Turn 2, and final turn, turn 3, and then get ready to pull it off the fire when that's done. Go ahead and pull that off the fire. We need to grab our St. John's Wort, only 1 handful, into the mortar and pestle, and grind it up. Toss it into the cauldron, and we're lowering it for 1 turn. This time we have to use the bellows. So go ahead and lower it down. Turn the sand glass, and hit the bellows. Once this is done, we'll pick it up, and it'll be ready for distillation. So come over here to your file, look at your still, and pour your potion out. And we got a strong Bowman's Brew. We are working on Buck's Blood today, using oil as our base. We'll start that. Go ahead and put that in your cauldron. We need 3 ingredients here. We need St. John's Wort, Dandelion, and Comfrey. So in alphabetical order, let's go for Comfrey first, Dandelion next, and St. John's Wort last. We start with St. John's Wort. We need only 1 of each. So toss that in the mortar and pestle and grind it up. Go ahead and toss that in a cauldron. Next, we need 1 handful of comfrey and directly into the cauldron. Comfrey on the right, toss it in. And we'll go ahead and lower this onto the fire. Turn the sand glass for 1 turn and be ready to pull it up when it's done. There we go, pull it off the fire. Now we need to add the dandelion right in the middle. Toss that into the cauldron. We're going to lower it. This one, we need the bellows. So we lower it, flip the sand glass, and then immediately pull on the bellows. We're only doing this for 1 turn, pulling it off, and then we should be good to go. Here we go. And this one, grab the file, and we can get it directly from the cauldron. And if everything worked properly, we should have a strong Buck's Blood potion. There we go. Let's make a chamomile decoction. Starting with a base of wine, pour that into your cauldron. This is one of the easier recipes. It goes very fast. So we only need 2 ingredients for this. We need chamomile and sage. We'll start with the chamomile, which is 2 handfuls. So grab 2 handfuls and put them both in the cauldron. There we go. Lower it down. And then flip the sand glass right away. And be ready to pull it off the fire when the sand's done. There we go. Pull it up. Next, we need to grab 1 handful of sage and grind it up. So go ahead and look down at your mortar and pestle and grind it. And once that's done, toss it into the cauldron. That's it. We just grab a file next and pour it directly in, and we should be good to go. So if everything went according to plan, we should have a strong chamomile decoction. And there you go. We are working on the Cockrel Potion. This starts with spirits. Go and pour that in. Only 2 ingredients with this one. It's going to be valerian and mint. We will start with mint and then go down to valerian. First step is to grind the mint, and we need 2 handfuls of mint for that. So 2 handfuls into the mortar and pestle. 1 and 2. So go ahead and grind that up. Toss it into the cauldron. And we're going to boil for a single turn. So go ahead and drop it down on the fire. Look over at your sand glass and get that turned over. And then be ready to pull it up off the fire when the sand runs out. There we go, it's all done. Now we need to add the valerian, and only one handful. And it just goes straight in. Now we go ahead and drop it back down on the fire and boil for 2 turns. Lower it down, flip the sand glass, and wait for a second turn. Here we go, second turn, and then be ready to pull it off the fire when that's out. Here we go, all done. Pull it up, and we need to get a file and distill this one. So down here, go and hold your distill button, and then pull it from the main cauldron. And if everything worked out well, we should have a strong Cockrel Potion. There we go. Let's go ahead and brew a Digestive Potion, which starts with water as a base. Grab your water jug, pour that into the cauldron, and then we'll prepare 3 different ingredients. So we need, starting at the top, we need charcoal, we need nettle next, and finally we need thistle. Starting with thistle, we need 2 handfuls. They go straight into the cauldron. So grab handful 1, handful 2, and then we boil for 2 turns. So go ahead and drop it down onto the fire, look over at your sand glass, and turn it as soon as you can. Now once the sand runs out, go ahead and flip it a second turn, and then look at your cauldron and be ready to pull it off the fire as soon as it's done. All right, that's up. Go ahead and pull it off the fire, and we are going to work on our nettle next. We need a single nettle. It needs to be grinded up as well, so go ahead and drop it into your mortar and pestle and grind that up. All right, go ahead and add that to the cauldron. And we need to boil this for a single turn. So drop it down onto the fire. Look at your sand glass again and turn that over. And then be ready to pull this off the flame when it's done. There we go, all done. Now we need to grind the charcoal. So down here, the charcoal, the plant ingredients will always be up here. The animal or special ingredients like rocks and stuff, minerals will be up here. Go ahead and grind this, and then we'll add that into the cauldron. Finally, we grab a file, and this one just comes straight out of the cauldron. So look at your cauldron and pour it out. And if everything went to plan, we should have a strong digestive potion. There we go, we got it. Let's work on a Dollmaker Potion, which starts with a base of spirits. We'll go ahead and pour that in. And we only need 2 ingredients for this one. We need herb Paris, and then we also need valerian. Starting with herb Paris, which is 2 handfuls. So grab 2 handfuls of herb Paris, and they just go straight into the cauldron. There's 1, and there is handful number 2, and boil for 3 turns. So we're going to drop this down onto the fire. Look over at your sand glass and immediately turn it when you can. All right, we're going to do that 3 times and then pull it off the fire. All right, there's round 2. And finally for round 3, go ahead and look at your cauldron and be ready to pull that off the flame. There we go, pull it off the flame and look at your valerian. We need only a single handful for this, and it does need to be grinded up. So into the mortar and pestle, grind it up, and into the cauldron when that's done. Into the cauldron, and we are going to drop it down onto the flame immediately for 2 turns. So again, look at your sand glass, get that flipped. That's turn 1. We need 1 more, and then we'll be done. All right, second turn. Go ahead and look at your cauldron and be ready to pull it off. Okay, all done. Pull it up, and then let's go ahead and grab a file. This needs to be distilled, so we're going to look at our still. And then pull it from the cauldron. And if everything went according to plan, we should have a strong Dollmaker Potion. Perfect, we got it. We are crafting an Embrocation Potion now. Starting with an oil base. Pour that into the cauldron. And we need 4 different ingredients for this one. We need boar's tusk first, then eyebright, poppy is next, and finally valerian. So all 3 ingredients, we only need 1 of each. So we start with the poppy and the valerian. So poppy first, straight into the cauldron, then the valerian, that into the cauldron, and we drop it down onto the flame for 2 turns. So move your sand glass over, and we'll wait here for a second turn after this. There we go, turn 1 done, flip it 1 more time, then look at your cauldron and be ready to pull it off the flame. There we go, all done, pull it up, and then now we need to look at our eyebright. This needs to be grinded and then added straight into the cauldron. So down to the mortar and pestle, grind it up. Into the cauldron. And then finally we need the boar's tusk. That just goes straight in, so grab the boar tusk, toss it in, and then we're going to boil for a single turn. Down onto the flame you go, and we'll flip the sand glass for a single turn, and then be ready to pull it off the flame once that's done. There we go, all done. We'll grab our phial over here from the left, and then pour it straight from the cauldron. And everything went according to plan. We got a strong Embrocation potion. Now let's craft a fever tonic. We start with wine as a base. Grab your wine jug and pour it into the cauldron. We need 3 different ingredients for this, starting with ginger and elderberry leaves. So ginger, elderberry leaves, and then finally feverfew. We start with the feverfew. We need 3 handfuls of it. So feverfew is here on the left. Let's go ahead and toss that in. There's our first scoop, second scoop, and the third scoop. Now we drop it down straight onto the fire. Get ready to turn your sand glass, and we'll do that twice. There's turn 1 down, and because we only need 2 turns, we'll stir at our cauldron and be ready to pull it off the fire once it's done. Here we go, pull it off the fire. Next, we need to worry about the elderberry leaves. We need 1 handful. This needs to be grinded. So into the mortar and pestle, grind it up. This goes straight into the cauldron. And then finally we can use our ginger. Over here on the right, this just goes straight in as well. And then last step, grab the phial and distill it. And if everything went to plan, we should have a strong fever tonic. Actually, I take that back. This is one of those special potions that doesn't have a strength. So you can either brew it or you don't, I guess. Let's make a fox potion, starting with an oil as the base. Grab your oil and pour it into the cauldron. We have 4 different ingredients we need for this one. So we'll start with charcoal. We also need belladonna, nettle, and finally St. John's wort. Everything we need 1 of each, starting with St. John's wort and nettle. These can both be grinded at the same time. So St. John's wort, toss that into the mortar and pestle. Also grab your nettles and grind that up. This is going straight into the cauldron, and we'll boil it for 2 turns. So down under the fire, look over at your sand glass and get that turned over as soon as you can. We need 2 turns here, so we'll stay looking at the sand glass. And once it's out, we flip it over for a second turn, then look over at the cauldron and be ready to pull it off the flame. There we go, all done. Next, we need to look at our charcoal and add it to the cauldron after grinding it. So charcoal into the mortar and pestle, we'll grind it into the cauldron, and then finally belladonna, which doesn't need to be grinded, it can go straight in. We'll grab 1 handful there, and then boil it for 1 turn. So flip your sand glass and be ready to pull it off the flame. All right, all done. Pull it off the flame. Let's look over at our phial, and this one we get straight from the cauldron. And if we did everything right, we should have a strong fox potion. Perfect. Let's craft a hair o' the dog potion. This one starts with water as the base. Grab your water jug, pour that out into the cauldron. We need 3 different ingredients for this one. We need mint, sage, and St. John's wort. Start with the sage and the St. John's wort. We don't need to grind these up. So St. John's wort and sage into the cauldron. Boil for 3 turns. So we need to drop this down onto the flame. Look over at our sand glass and get that turned over as soon as we can. And we'll stir at it. We got to do that 3 times. All right, on to turn 2. And on to the final turn. Go ahead and look at the cauldron and be ready to pull it off when the sand runs out. All right, that's it. Pull it up. Final step, we need to grind the mint into the mortar and pestle. And once that's done, it'll go into the cauldron. And then this one we can get straight from the cauldron. So we'll look over at our phials and then just grab it straight from the cauldron. And if we did it right, we should have a strong hair o' the dog potion. There we go. Let's make some lead gunshot powder. We start with a base of water. So grab your water jug and pour that in. And then we'll need 3 ingredients: sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal. We'll grab our charcoal first, and then down towards the bottom we should find saltpeter and sulfur. We need to grind the sulfur and the saltpeter first, only 1 of each. So sulfur into the mortar and pestle, saltpeter as well, and then grind these up. Go straight into the cauldron, and we need to boil it for 2 turns. So down on the fire, turn the sand glass. We got to do that 2 times. All right, turn 2, look back at the cauldron and get ready to pull it off the flame. Next, we'll need to grind charcoal after we pull this off the flame. Here we go. Let's grab our charcoal into the mortar and pestle. and then grind that up. After this, we'll drop it in and boil it for 2 turns, and then we should be good to go. Into the cauldron. We'll lower it down onto the fire. And then 2 turns on the sand glass. All right, onto our second turn, and then be ready to pull it off the fire. There we go, all set. Now this one is a little different. We have to pour and grind, which means you look at your mortar and pestle. We'll pour a little bit of that, whatever the substance is, we'll grind it up, and then pour it into our gunpowder pouch. Now we get 13 balls. I do have a perk that gives us 3 extra ammunition. So if you don't have those, you should be getting 10. Let's work on a Leathean Water Potion. Start with spirits as our base. Pour that into the cauldron. We're going to need 3 different types of herbs. We'll start with belladonna at the top. We need henbane, and then we also need wormwood towards the bottom. So first step is to grind the wormwood and add it to the cauldron. Wormwood calls for 2 scoops. So we need 2 scoop handfuls. Put that into the mortar and pestle. There's our second scoop. Grind it up, and then into the cauldron it goes. There we go. Next, we need to add the belladonna and then brew everything for 3 turns. Belladonna scoop straight into the cauldron and then down onto the fire. We'll look over at our sand glass and turn that over immediately. And we'll do that 3 times and then pull it off the fire. Okay, turn 2. And that's final turn, turn 3. Now we need to look at the cauldron and get ready to pull it off the fire. The final step asks for henbane. We just put it straight in. So I'll pull it off the fire, the sand's out. Let's grab our henbane and just throw it straight in. This one does need to be distilled, so we'll go over to our file, look down at our distillery, and pull a little bit in from our cauldron. Now, Leathean Water is one of those special potions that does not have a strength value. It's either Leathean Water or you mess it up and you get nothing. There's no weak or strong. Let's craft a Lion Potion, starting with Spiritus. So go ahead and grab your Spirits bottle and pour that in. We need 2 ingredients only for this one. We need sage and mint, starting with mint and then sage a little bit lower. First step is to add the sage into the cauldron, and we need 2 scoops of each. There's 1 scoop of sage and a 2nd scoop of sage. This will go straight down onto the fire, and we boil it for 2 turns. So look at your sand glass, get that turned over immediately, and we'll do that twice. All right, there's 1 turn. Now we'll look at our cauldron, and as soon as the sand runs out, we need to pull it off the flame. All right, all done, pull it up. Next, we need 2 scoops of mint, and this needs to be grinded up in the mortar and pestle, so go ahead and put 1 scoop and 2 scoops. We'll go ahead and grind that up and then add it to our cauldron when it's done. Now the final step is to grab a file and pour it straight in. And if everything went to plan, we should have a strong Lion Potion. There we go. Let's make a Lullaby Potion, starting with oil as our base. Go and throw that in the cauldron. And we need 3 different ingredients for this. We need herb paris, poppy, and thistle. First step is to add the poppy and boil for 1 turn. Grab 1 handful of poppy into the cauldron, lower it down onto the fire, and then immediately flip the sand glass. And because it's only 1 turn, we'll look at the cauldron and be ready to pull it off as soon as the sand runs out. There we go, all done. Now we need to add the thistle and boil for 1 more turn. Flip down onto the fire, flip the sand glass, and get ready to pull it off. There we go, that's all done. Next, we need to grab our herb paris. This needs to be grinded first. Into the mortar and pestle and grind it up. Into the cauldron. And that's it. Let's grab a file. This one can be taken directly from the cauldron. And if everything went according to plan, we should have a strong Lullaby Potion. There we go. Let's craft a Marigold Decoction. We start with a base of water. Go ahead and pour that straight into the cauldron. And we need only 2 ingredients here, marigold and nettle. Nettle and marigold. First step is to add the nettle into the cauldron. We need only 1 handful though. So 1 handful of nettle into the cauldron and then down onto the fire for 2 turns. So we'll lower this down onto the flame. Look at our sand glass, turn it over for turn 1, and we'll stay here for 2 turns. Turn 2, and we'll stir at our cauldron. As soon as that's done, we'll pull it off the flame. Next, we need 2 handfuls of marigold. So grab your marigold and into the mortar and pestle. 1 scoop, 2 scoops, and we'll grind it all together. All right, that goes into the cauldron. And there's nothing else we need to do special. Just grab yourself a file, and we can pour it straight from the cauldron. And if we did it right, we should have a strong Marigold Decoction. Perfect. We are crafting Mintha today, working with a wine base first. Pour that into your cauldron. We got 3 ingredients for this one. So let's go ahead and add our ingredients. We have dandelion, marigold, and mint. First step is to grind the dandelions. We need 3 handfuls of dandelion. Let's go ahead and toss all that into the mortar and pestle. And actually, the mint also goes in here and needs to be grinded up. So toss that in and start grinding. This goes into the cauldron and onto the flame for 2 turns. So as soon as we can, we'll lower that down, look over at your sand glass, and get that turned over. We'll stay here for 1 more turn. There we go, turn it over. And then back to the cauldron. As soon as the sand wears out, we'll pull it off the flame. All right, next step is to add the marigold, which is only a single handful. So 1 handful of marigold into the cauldron. This time is a little different. We need to bring this down to the flames. Go ahead and flip the sand glass and then immediately push the bellows. So we need to get the flame going a little hotter than it normally would be. This is for only a single turn. So once that runs out, we pull that up off the flame and we should be good to go. This needs to be distilled, so grab your file, look down to the left at your still, and then pull some fluid from the cauldron. And we should have a strong Mintha potion if we did it right. Beautiful, we got Henry's Mintha. That means we did it really well. Let's make some booze. We're going to work on Moonshine right now, starting with spirits. Grab that, put that in your cauldron. We need 2 ingredients for this. We need mint, and we also need wormwood. We'll start with the wormwood. It goes straight into the cauldron. We need 2 handfuls, 1 and 2. This is going to get boiled for 2 turns, so we'll drop it down onto the fire immediately, look over at our sand glass and turn it over. And we'll wait here for a second turn. All right, ready for a second turn. We will look at the cauldron, and as soon as it's done, we will lift it off the flame. There we go. Next, we need mint. We need 2 handfuls of this. It goes into the mortar and pestle so we can grind it up. And then that goes straight into the cauldron, and then we boil for 1 turn. So we'll lower it down onto the flame, flip the sand glass, and then get ready to pull it back off the flame. There we go, pull it off. And finally, we need to distill. So we'll grab a file. We'll look down to the bottom left at our still and begin the distillation process. And the final step is to drink all 11 and get wasted. Let's work on a Nighthawk Potion. This starts with water as our base. Pour that into the cauldron. And we need 3 different ingredients here. We'll start with belladonna, then chamomile, and finally eyebright. First step is to grind the eyebright and add it to the cauldron, and we need 2 handfuls of this. So 2 handfuls of eyebright into the mortar and pestle to grind. And scoop 2. And we'll begin grinding it. We're not ready to boil it yet though. We need to add the belladonna as well, although it doesn't need to be grinded, it just goes straight in. So 1 handful of belladonna, and we boil for 3 turns. So we'll drop it down onto the fire, look over at our sand glass, and as soon as we can, the sand glass will flip it over. We're going to be here for 3 turns, so we'll wait for a little bit. That's 1 turn down, 2 turns down, we're on our final turn. Let's go ahead and look at our cauldron and get ready to pull it off the flame. Alright, we're all done, let's pull it up. Last step is to grind the chamomile, and we'll add it into the cauldron. This one we only need a single handful. No need to boil at this point, we just need to pour it out straight into a file. So we'll grab a file, look at our cauldron, and if we did it right, we should have a strong Nighthawk Potion. Oh, we got Henry's Nighthawk Potion, so we did an even better job. Let's make a Painkiller Brew. We start with the spiritus as the base. So grab your spirits bottle and toss it into the cauldron. We're going to need 3 ingredients here, starting with comfrey at the top. We also need poppy and marigold. First step is to grind the poppy and add it to the cauldron. Poppy, we need 3 handfuls, so all 3 handfuls will go into the mortar and pestle. There's number 2 and the final one. We'll go ahead and grind that up and transfer the contents into the cauldron. Next, we need to add the marigold, only 1 handful, straight in. However, this needs to be boiled with the bellows, so we drop it down onto the fire, flip the sand glass, and immediately hit the bellows. Now we're doing this only for a single turn, so as soon as that's done, we pull it off. And then next we need to add the comfrey. Straight into the cauldron, only 1 comfrey, and then down back onto the fire. This needs to go for 2 turns, so we'll look at our sand glass, get that turned over, and wait for turn 2. Turn 2, and then now we'll watch the cauldron, and as soon as the sand runs out, we'll pull it off the flame. There we go. And final step, grab a file and distill it. And the bottom left, you've got your distillation. And if we did it right, we should have strong Painkiller Brew. Nice, we got Henry's Painkiller Brew, even better. We are making the Quickfinger Potion, starting with water as our base. Grab the water, pour that into the cauldron, and we will need 3 different ingredients. So we'll start with cobwebs. Next, we need some eyebright, and finally at the bottom we need valerian. First step is to add the cobweb and the eyebright straight into the cauldron. Cobweb, we need only 1. We'll grab that, put it into the cauldron. Eyebright, we need 2 scoops. So 2 eyebright and a second one. And then we need to boil this for 3 turns. So go ahead and lower it down, flip the sand glass over, and we'll wait on the sand glass. We got to do that 3 times. There's number 2, and the final turn. All right, pull that off the flame. Next, we need to grind the valerian. Grab 2 scoops of valerian into the mortar and pestle. Go ahead and grind that up, and then we'll add it to the cauldron. Finally, we boil for a single turn, and then we're all done. There we go, all set. Let's grab our file, and this one can be taken straight from the cauldron. And we got Henry's Quickfinger Potion, which means we did it basically perfect. Let's craft some Savior Schnapps. Starting with wine as our base, go ahead and grab your wine and pour it into the cauldron. We'll need 2 ingredients for this, nettle and belladonna. So starting with belladonna, and then further down we see nettle. First step is to grab the nettle. We only need a single scoop. It goes right in the cauldron and then boil for 2 turns. So down onto the fire, flip the sand glass over as fast as you can, and then watch it for 2 turns. All right, second turn, and then watch the cauldron. As soon as it's done, we will pull it off the flame. There we go. Now we need to grind the belladonna and then add it into the mixture. So 2 scoops of belladonna is needed here. So 2 into the mortar, and then let's grind that up. All right, let's dump it into the cauldron, lower it onto the flame, and we're going to boil it for a single turn. We'll flip the sand glass over, but we'll still watch the cauldron and then pull it off the flame after 1. There we go. Final step is to pour it directly from the cauldron. So grab a file, and then hopefully we have a good one. Nice, we got Henry's Savior Schnapps. That's the highest tier, which means we did it perfect. Let's make some scattershot powder, starting with water as our base. So grab some water, pour it into the cauldron, and then we'll need 3 different ingredients. So leech coal, saltpeter, and sulfur. First step is to grind the sulfur and the saltpeter. We only need 1 of each. We'll put both of these into the mortar and pestle and then grind it up. Here we go, into the cauldron. Now we need to boil for 3 turns. So we'll lower that onto the flame, turn this over 3 times, and then we'll be all set. All right, final turn. Now we need to look at our cauldron and pull it off the flame as soon as it's done. Here we go, all done. Let's go ahead and grind the infused charcoal, aka the leached coal. We'll put it in our mortar and pestle, grind it up, and then we'll boil for 1 more turn. There we go, drop it in, lower it back onto the flame, and then 1 turn with the sand glass, and then we'll be all done. Here we go, all set. Let's go ahead and grab our mortar and pestle, and then that will allow us to get the dry goods. So lead shot and scatter shot both need to be extracted with the mortar and pestle. And if we did it right, we should have 18 rounds, I believe. 15 if you don't have the perks, 18 if you've got both of the perks. Now let's make some soap. We start with oil as our base. Pour that into the cauldron. We need 3 ingredients for this, starting with charcoal. We also need dandelion and thistle. So we start with the thistle. We need 2 scoops of it down into the grinder, the mortar and pestle. So that's 1 scoop and 2 scoops, and let's grind it together. Next, we lower this down onto the flame, and we'll turn our sand glass over as soon as we can, and we'll do that 2 times. All right, once that's done, we'll hover our mouse over the cauldron. We'll pull it off the flame as soon as we're done. There we go, all set. Now we need to add the dandelion to the cauldron. Only need 1 of these, and then boil for 1 more turn. So pull it down onto the flame, flip the sand glass, and get ready to pull it back off. There we go, all set. Finally, we need to grind the charcoal, add it to the cauldron. We'll put that in our mortar and pestle and grind it up. All right, into the cauldron. We don't need to boil anymore. We just need to grab a file from the left. We'll go ahead and grab our mixture, and we should have a nice vial of soap. There we go, we got 11 soaps. I'm still showing 2 recipes missing, but neither Griff nor I were able to locate it. I've checked every single trader on both maps, so my guess is they're either tied to a quest or not in the game just yet. I'm curious to hear which potions you're planning to brew first. Let me know in the comments. If you want more alchemy tips or want to learn other parts of the game, click this top 100 tips video for everything KCD2. A huge shout out to the Patreon supporters and YouTube members who help support this channel. They get early access to all our videos, so consider joining them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.